Oh, I don't know. I mean, could have come off maybe a couple cemetery tombstones. Maybe the phone book.
Every single day, I bring you another story straight from Hollywood's golden age, the moments that built legends and broke hearts. If you love keeping these memories alive, hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, but it means the world. Bob Dylan, the so-called quiet prophet of American music, the Nobel Prize legend who everyone dreamed of collaborating with, just dropped a truth bomb that flipped his image completely. At 83, he broke his silence with a confession no one ever imagined coming. He exposed a secret list of 7 artists he couldn't stand, and when those names hit the light, the entire music world lost it. These weren't random enemies. They were his own collaborators, old friends, even people who once called him their idol. They cheered him on in interviews, showered him with praise in public, yet behind the scenes, he wiped them clean from his life. And once the real reasons behind those broken friendships came out, it became crystal clear why they all promised never to share the same stage again. At the very top of Dylan's so-called hate list, shockingly, sits Paul McCartney. Yes, that Paul McCartney, the adored Beatle, the world believed Dylan respected without question, but turns out things were way different. When you learn what went down between these two music giants, every rumor and every strange silence suddenly starts to make perfect sense. The first crack between Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney showed up way back in 1987, long before celebrity feuds were front-page drama. McCartney was giving a regular interview, chatting about melodies, pop music structure, and how the sound of the times was shifting. Everything was smooth until the reporter casually mentioned Dylan's latest projects, the darker, more haunting songs he'd been experimenting with. Paul laughed, gave a little shrug, and said, "Bob isn't writing songs people can remember anymore." It sounded light, almost like a joke, but to Dylan it cut deep, like a shot straight to the heart. People forget that the Dylan of the mid-'80s wasn't the untouchable legend he once seemed. He was tired, worn down, and climbing out of a storm of personal and spiritual confusion. He was rebuilding himself from the ground up. So when one of the biggest icons in music suggested his new sound didn't have lasting power, Dylan didn't just feel criticized, he felt betrayed and humiliated. A close friend later remembered Dylan mumbling, "He wanted to be Lennon. He never understood me." It wasn't arrogance. It was a boundary being drawn in silence. After that, everything changed fast. Plans for a small joint tour vanished overnight. Private meetups were suddenly postponed. McCartney never got why Dylan pulled away, but insiders say everyone around them knew exactly what had caused the sudden freeze. Fans begged for a reunion for years, hoping the two legends might reconnect, but those who knew Dylan best say it never happened. Lennon had been the Beatle he truly respected, sharp, bold, unpredictable. Paul, on the other hand, was the polished charmer, built for the spotlight, careful with every move. To Dylan, that charm wasn't real. It felt staged. And in the shadows of that quiet war, another name began to surface. Eric Clapton, the guitar hero, some whispered, was trying to claim Dylan's throne. The second name on Bob Dylan's secret hate list is a shocker. None other than Eric Clapton. What's wild is that Dylan didn't start out disliking him at all. In fact, he used to praise Clapton's skill and style, calling him one of the finest guitarists alive. But that respect flipped fast. Sharp, cold, and all because of one unforgettable moment that still echoes through rock circles. It all went down in late 1978 inside a small, sweaty rehearsal room in West Hollywood. A few musicians were hanging out after a long recording session, the kind of night filled with laughter, tired chatter, and endless cigarette smoke. Clapton was loose, confident, a little too comfortable, talking louder than usual. Then in the middle of his rambling, he dropped a sentence that froze the entire room. "Dylan's losing his edge. Someone's got to step in." No one laughed. One of the guys who was there later said, "He didn't say it mean, he said it like it was just the truth." And that made it worse. And of course, in the tight world of music, nothing ever stays secret. Within a single day, those words had already reached Dylan's ears. When Dylan heard it, he didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't even seem shocked. He just sat there, nodded slowly, and according to a bassist in the room, said one single line that cut deep. Funny how people change when they think they're catching up. That line wasn't an attack on Clapton's guitar skills. It was a jab at his hunger for status, his quiet rivalry that Dylan had clearly seen coming. The fallout came instantly. A jam session that Dylan and Clapton had been planning vanished from the schedule like it never existed. Calls went unanswered, messages left hanging. Clapton started asking around, trying to figure out what went wrong, until one sound engineer finally told him straight, "Whatever you said the other night, Bob heard it." Years later, in 1981, Clapton tried to make peace. Backstage at a festival, he walked toward Dylan with his hand half raised, ready to apologize. But Dylan spotted him, clenched his jaw, turned away, and walked off without a word. Clapton froze, eyes wide, stunned, as it hit him that this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was forever. Joan Baez, the folk queen, Dylan's one-time muse and partner in musical rebellion, ended up on his hate list too. Their fallout wasn't just about music, it was heartbreak mixed with betrayal, the kind of wound that never really heals. Fans still whisper about what went wrong between these two legends who once ruled the folk scene side by side, because what tore them apart wasn't fame or ego alone. It was personal, painfully personal. It all started in the stormy mid-1960s when Dylan was reinventing himself, stepping away from protest anthems and diving into electric chaos. In one interview, Joan made what she thought was an innocent comment, saying Dylan was turning away from the people who need him. To the world, it sounded like a mild observation, but to Dylan, it cut deep, like betrayal from someone who knew exactly where his insecurities lived. The final crack came during his 1965 UK tour, the very one that changed music forever. Joan flew in expecting to share the stage like they always had, the legendary duo back together again. But when she arrived, everything had changed. The crew brushed her off, and Dylan himself wouldn't confirm her slot. One crew member recalled Joan finally confronting him in a hallway asking, "Are you really shutting me out?" Dylan's reply? Cold as ice. "This isn't your show." That one line hit harder than any headline. It wasn't just a rejection, it was humiliation, right in the middle of a world tour where everyone was watching. A few nights later, Joan realized it wasn't just about music anymore. Dylan wasn't evolving with her, he was cutting her loose completely. She later admitted, "He didn't owe me anything, except honesty." Dylan never apologized, never explained. And for Joan, that silence, that refusal to even acknowledge the wound, hurt more than any betrayal could. Joan Baez didn't stay quiet about the pain. She took it straight to the public. In interviews, she spoke about Dylan losing his way, saying he'd walked away from activism and the people who once looked up to him. She never disrespected his talent, but she went straight for something even deeper, his integrity. And that was the one thing Dylan guarded tighter than fame itself. Those close to him said he felt stripped bare, almost betrayed, like someone had taken his private fears and used them as ammunition. He didn't lash out, didn't make a scene, he just erased the idea of ever working with her again. Every time a manager floated the idea of a reunion, Dylan shut it down without hesitation. He later told a friend, "She used my doubts to shame me." Their silence stretched over 4 long decades. Even when they reunited briefly during the 1975 Rolling Thunder review, the tension was impossible to hide. Cameras caught them smiling on stage, but behind those smiles was distance. Performing together, yes, but trusting each other? Not even close. And then came the next name on Dylan's hate list, Lou Reed, the punk poet with a razor tongue who didn't hold back for anyone. Reed locked in his spot the moment he spoke against Dylan publicly, cutting straight at the man's identity. It happened in 1974 during an interview promoting a Velvet Underground project. The journalist asked Reed what he thought of Bob Dylan's influence on songwriting. Without missing a beat, Reed fired off a line that still stings today. "Dylan never meant anything to me." Then, just to twist the knife, he added, "His lyrics are smoke and mirrors." People who heard the full interview swear Reed wasn't joking, wasn't jealous, wasn't even angry. He said it in that same calm, detached voice he used when talking about amps or guitar distortion, and that's what made it hit so hard. For Reed, it might have just been an opinion, but for Dylan, it was personal, brutally personal. When Lou Reed's harsh words finally reached Bob Dylan, he didn't explode or fire back. What he did was way colder. According to someone who toured with him in the 1970s, Dylan just nodded once and said, "Let him talk. Silence will answer him." And that silence became the feud itself. Deep, heavy, and permanent. From that moment on, Dylan erased Reed from his world completely. No public mentions, no acknowledgments, nothing. Musicians who tried to bring up Reed in conversation said Dylan would instantly change the subject, flicking it away like ashes off a cigarette. It wasn't anger anymore. It was ice-cold indifference, the kind that burns even worse than rage. Over time, that quiet tension only grew. A decade later, in the early 90s, Dylan was sitting down for a Rolling Stone interview when the journalist casually mentioned Lou Reed's name. Dylan looked up, smirked slightly, and asked, "Who?" It wasn't a joke. It was pure dismissal, the kind of cold shoulder that stings deeper than any insult. Reed heard about it later and reportedly rolled his eyes, saying, "Of course he said that." But behind that cool act, insiders said it got to him more than he ever admitted. And here's the twist almost no one knows. Reed once told a friend, "Dylan was too insecure to take me honestly." When those words circled back to Dylan, that was it. The door slammed shut for good. Then came the next painful name on the list, Leonard Cohen, the poet Dylan once adored but eventually resented. Cohen holds the 5th spot, and it's the most heartbreaking of them all because it didn't start with rivalry. It started with admiration. Dylan genuinely loved Cohen's work, calling him the highest level of songwriting. He spoke about him with a rare softness, the kind he almost never showed. In the early 1970s, Leonard Cohen sat down for an interview in Paris, calm, composed, every word carefully chosen. When asked about Bob Dylan's early songwriting, he smiled politely, paused, and said, "His early songs were a bit adolescent compared to the poets I admire." He meant it in a technical, academic way, not as an insult. But for Dylan, context didn't matter. That single word, adolescent, landed like a slap across the face. People close to Dylan said he reread that quote over and over, refusing to believe Cohen had actually said it. This wasn't some rival throwing shade. This was the one songwriter Dylan truly respected, maybe even feared. He saw Cohen's writing as untouchable, almost sacred, so hearing him dismiss those early songs felt like a mentor whispering, "You were never as good as you thought." That stung deeper than any critic ever could. Years later, they ran into each other by chance in New York. Cohen tried to make small talk, but Dylan stayed cool, distant, unreadable. Cohen later told a friend, "Bob speaks in riddles." But insiders said there were no riddles at all. Dylan simply didn't want to open that door again. To him, trust once broken was gone for good. Their strange rivalry only grew from there. When Cohen released Hallelujah, Dylan publicly praised it, even performed it on stage, yet never reached out privately. And when Cohen later complimented Dylan's simplicity of heart in songwriting, Dylan ignored it completely. To fans, it looked like indifference, but to those who knew him, it was something colder, deliberate distance. That one word from decades earlier had left a scar that never healed. So now the question's on you. Which name on Dylan's secret list shocked you the most? And which feud do you think should have been mended before time ran out? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next untold story hiding behind music's biggest legends.